Greetings, Father Joe here, friendly neighborhood pastor coming to you from St. Patrick's Church in really cold Highland Mills, New York. Today is the second Sunday in Ordinary Time, and we are going to be, between now and the beginning of Lent, we're going to be reading from St. Paul's first letter to the Corinthians. This week we're reading from John's Gospel, chapter 2, but then we're going to switch into Luke. This is year C, and so we're going to be reading a lot from the Gospel according to St. Luke. And our first reading is from the book of the prophet Isaiah. Sometimes it's unofficially, this part is unofficially referred to as 3rd Isaiah. It speaks of this fulfillment. It's if you will, it's a prediction of heaven. And by the way, the same thing is true in our gospel today. We are at a wedding feast, and in the book of Revelation, heaven is the wedding feast of the Lamb, and so we have Jesus doing his first of his signs. So he is revealing his glory in a small way here at a wedding. So it is foreshadowing the wedding feast of the Lamb in heaven. I generally read over the readings weeks in advance. At this point, I've done everything up to Lent, so I'm about 6 weeks ahead. And I do this so that the readings can just kind of marinate in my head. It also tends to bring things up that maybe I didn't see or think about the first time. Well, this week I had a dream, and in the dream twice I said, it's all about family. And when I woke up, I said, oh, it's all about family. And I knew instinctively that that was referring to the readings this Sunday. And so we start with, I'm going to start with the gospel. We have this wedding, the beginning of this new family, and Jesus and his family are invited. And something to remember, back in Jesus's times, the wedding was not, a quick wedding and then, maybe a 4 or 5 hour reception. Weddings took days, sometimes an entire week. And, the guest list was not close friends. It was pretty much everybody. And so running out of wine is not a small thing. If you've got a ton of people and they're going to be there for 7 days, if it's Thursday and you run out of wine, boy, that is a catastrophe. And so Mary says to Jesus, they've run out of wine. And Jesus makes what may seem to be a strange response. He says, woman, how does your concern affect me? My hour has not yet come. When I was younger, I used to tell stories about my mother, because I got news for you. My mother would not have tolerated backtalk. But this wasn't backtalk. In John's gospel, Mary isn't a woman, she is the woman. The hour that Jesus speaks about. This isn't an hour, this is the hour. Similarly, St. John, he is the beloved disciple, or the disciple whom Jesus loved. So this idea of woman and the hour, if you go to John chapter 19, Jesus is on the cross. His hour has come. The hour is his being lifted up, or his being glorified. So again, the end of our gospel today, it says, and Jesus' glory was revealed. It is further revealed when Jesus is on the cross. And from the cross, he looks down at Mary and St. John, and he says, woman, behold your son. And then to St. John, he says, behold your mother. So this idea of Mary as the woman. Mary is the new Eve. Jesus is sometimes referred to as the new man. He is the new Adam. Adam was the man who was first created, but he fell from grace. Jesus is the new man who was tempted but doesn't fall. Eve is the woman, the first woman. And again, like Adam, she falls, and so she loses that. But in Mary, again, and Mary is conceived without original sin, so Mary is like the new Eve. And so Mary says to Jesus, they've run out of wine. And Jesus gives this response, which is not sassy, it's honor, all right? My hour has not yet come. And the funny thing is, Mary doesn't have a discussion with them. She just looks at the servers and she says, do whatever he tells you. And again, I've said this before. Anytime we talk about Mary, it is never specifically about Mary. It's always Mary in relationship to Jesus, Mary in relationship to us. And so just as Mary says to the servers, do whatever he tells you, Mary says to us, do whatever he tells you. So we've got these 6 stone water jars, which, by the way, were there for cleaning feet. And so Jesus has them fill them, and he doesn't say, he doesn't do this like huge prayer or anything like that. He just tells them to take some to the head waiter, who would be like the best man or the steward, family friend who's responsible for this. I would not have wanted to be the servant who had to take the water, because could still taste like feet. I don't know. But Jesus does this miraculous change. He turns the water into wine, and not just a little bit. These would have been like barrels. We are talking about like 150 gallons or something like that. I mean, this is just a huge, huge amount. But it is a sign of heaven. And it is always done in relationship to the family, because you're going to hear me repeat this a number of times. It's all about the family. Now, in our second reading, we have St. Paul. St. Paul is writing to the Corinthians, and from now until Lent, he's going to be talking about the church. The church is the body of Christ. Another thing we could say is we are the family of God. Jesus is our brother. Jesus is our Redeemer, which in Jesus' time, it was a title for the firstborn. He was responsible for rescuing his younger siblings. So St. Paul talks about the body as being one. He says there are many gifts, but there's one Spirit. And then he starts talking about the gifts that have been given. To each individual, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for some benefit. Actually, if you go a little bit higher, he said there are different kinds of spiritual gifts, but the same Spirit. There are different forms of service. This could be read as ministry or an office. All right? But then we start going through these gifts. To one, through the Spirit is given the expression of wisdom, not making you smart, but the expression of wisdom. In other words, knowing what God wants, and that's given for the community. To another, the expression of knowledge. Again, it's not making you smart, it's this expression, it's this sharing. All right? To another, faith by the same Spirit. And again, I think you have to read that the same way. This is not simply a private faith, but this is faith given to the community. To another, gifts of healing. To another, mighty deeds. To another, prophecy. To another, discernment of spirits. To another, variety of tongues. To another, interpretation of tongues. These are all community gifts. If you think that you are Christian You got to be Catholic. And if you are Catholic, you are already Christian, because it's all about the family. Somebody cannot say, are you Christian or Catholic? It's like saying, am I Joe or am I a Tyrrell? The two inform each other. Which Tyrrell am I? I'm Joe. But am I just any Joe? No, I am a Joe who is of the family, or the Tyrrell family. You are a Christian by your baptism, but you were baptized into a church, and that church, by definition, has to be universal. Same thing with our family. You were born into a small family, but you are always part of a larger family. Years ago, I had a priest from Africa working with us, and he tells me, he says, my brother is coming next week. And so, we made big preparations and huge dinner. Went way overboard because his brother was coming. And when the guy comes, he introduces me. He says, this is my brother. I don't remember what his name is, Bob. He comes from the same village as my mother. He didn't even come from his village. He came from the village of his mother. And yet, he was family. Our parish, our church, is a parish family. You can't have your own little family without understanding that it makes sense within the context of the big family. And the same is true. We are, if you're in my parish, we're the family of St. Patrick's. We're also part of the family of the Archdiocese of New York. We're also part of the family of Catholics here in the United States. We are members of the one Catholic family, the one church that Jesus founded, and he founded it to be universal, international, all-inclusive. So we really cannot say, well, I'm interested in my family, but not your family. As soon as we do that, we're starting to become exclusive. So think about that when you come to Mass. Am I coming as an individual or as part of a family? This is a family meal. What are you bringing to the meal? So, in our first reading from the prophet Isaiah, we have this image of a wedding or a bride and a groom, and it is a foreshadowing of heaven. All right? No more shall people call you forsaken or your land desolate, but you shall be called my delight and your land espoused. This is speaking about the Jews. This is the extended family, which in Jesus is going to go from just the Jews to being everybody. All right? But this language is your land will be espoused. There's going to be a matrimonial, a spousal relationship with God, not just for you individually, but for the church. Good thing to look at with your parish. You shall be called, the Lord delights in you and makes your land his spouse. And listen to this next part. As a young man marries a virgin, your builder shall marry you. That could also be translated, your creator shall marry you. That's God's plan. If you go to the end of the Bible, the wedding feast of the Lamb, Jesus is the groom, and the church, all right, is his bride, and it is coming down out of heaven, prepared as a bride, prepared for her groom, her bridegroom. That's what is promised in the Old Testament, and it is fulfilled in Jesus. Jesus isn't a sign of the marriage. Jesus is the marriage. Jesus is where the human and the divine come together. He is that are being bound to God or united with God. We share in his, he shared in our humanity so that we can share in his divinity. Again, this is all about the family. You are saved by Jesus Christ, but not as an individual, but as a member of the family. It does not take anything away from you. It does not lessen God's love. As a matter of fact, it makes it so much richer, because everybody that we welcome into this family just multiplies the love. In other words, we are called not only to be Catholic, but to be apostolic. We are called to go out to our brothers and sisters and to welcome them to a fuller exercise or experience of being members of God's body. So, what's it all about? It's all about family. God bless you.